Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Bradley Dunn, and I'm the policy manager at Permit Sonoma. And I am going to welcome you to our housing element public workshops. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a really packed program, and we appreciate you guys all being here on time as we have a lot to discuss. So part of my job is to do your welcome and talk a little bit about ground rules. So you guys should all be able to see my screen. Is that we got screen share? So we wanted to talk about ground rules as we go through. The first, obviously, being respect. We have people from all over Sonoma County, and we're going to have different opinions and voices here, and so respecting each other is really important. We also want to make sure that we're learning from each other because our experiences across our great county can vary so widely. So we're going to have breakout groups coming up, and so in those breakout groups we have facilitators that are going to help guide discussion. But they need your help as well. So we're asking people who are, more outgoing, people that have a tendency to be really willing to share their opinions, people like me, to give us your best nuggets, curate your thoughts, make sure that you're giving us what is, your best thoughts, your best ideas. But we also want to make sure that we're giving other people an opportunity to participate. So we also want folks who aren't as prone to sharing and aren't as prone to that kind of activity to step up and give us a couple of your ideas, share with us a bit. And that will be really, really helpful for us. So Zoom Basics, there is a button in the bottom of your panel that has a mute button. Please use that mute button when you are not talking in your groups. And then there is a button that has a, where you can raise your hand. Please raise your hand if you've got questions, you've got comments. That helps us. If you're on the phone or can't figure that out, waving physically also works, but we're hoping that we have a orderly process so that we can hear from everybody. And then finally, we're asking for people to be concise. So those are our ground rules and Zoom Basics. I'm gonna turn you over to Eric Gage, and I'm gonna turn off everybody's video so you can see Eric and hear from Eric. He's the project manager for our housing element update. He's gonna tell you a little bit about what a housing element is and give us some background. So thank you so much for joining us, and yeah, appreciate it. Eric?
Good morning. Thank you everyone for being here. Next slide, please. So housing element is a chapter of the general plan being the overarching planning document that the county uses to guide development and prioritize different types of development. It looks at the housing in the housing element, looks at the housing in the unincorporated county only. It does not pertain to areas within incorporated cities. It outlines goals, policies, and objectives for guiding that development, and it must be updated on an 8-year cycle. Next slide. To the first caveat that we have to address is that the county as a regulatory entity does not build the housing itself. The housing element establishes the policies that will facilitate development by private developers, nonprofits, and other developer partners. So there are requirements that the county has to address when updating the housing element. Next slide. One of the more prominent items that the housing element needs to address is what is referred to as the RHNA, that is the Regional Housing Needs Allocation. And that is a number of homes that are assigned to every city and county in the state to construct during that 8-year RHNA cycle. And not only does it identify the number of homes, but it also divides those into income categories based on the county average income. Next slide. So there are a number of mandated requirements for housing element preparation. The first one is that the county make a diligent effort to include all economic segments of the community in the development and updating of the housing element, and that we clearly document the implementation of the housing element process, describe the community engagement throughout. Next slide.
One thing I forgot to tell people that we needed to record this so that we can, for posterity. So I apologize for that, but this is being recorded. And so I just wanted to make that announcement.
Also by state mandate, the housing element has to describe who was invited to participate in the process, who did participate in the process, general comments we received, and how comments were incorporated into the final document. The housing element must also describe the ongoing efforts to engage the public following the adoption of the housing element and through the implementation of it. Next slide. So here are the questions that we're going to discuss in our breakout groups, and I think I'll defer to Bradley to assign us and send us about our breakouts.
Yeah, so thank you all so much. I am going to send us to breakout groups in just a moment. But in these breakout groups, we're going to discuss these important questions. So we have six breakout rooms that are going to be created, and so we should have one guest coming for everybody. So hold on just a second, you will be sent to a breakout room. I just want to make sure I got this right. Okay, there we go. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for participating in the breakout rooms with us. We're going to do a quick report back. So we've only got about 10 minutes for this. So we're going to hear some highlights from folks. We've been taking notes and recording. So we're not necessarily going to say everything that was said because we don't have time for that. So I'm going to ask the co-hosts to share and only share stuff that hasn't been mentioned earlier. And since I'm going to run the room next, I'm just going to go first for ease. So there was a lot of conversation about not leapfrogging communities that have been built up. And going to new places to build housing, but making sure that where amenities are, good communities that have a good sense of community experience housing growth. So that was something that we wanted to see. There's a lot of support for accessory dwelling units in our group. People that thought that that would be a good way to add housing to those existing communities and build a kind of variety of housing. There was also some desire to make sure that we're not building tall buildings in kind of more rural areas that have a rural feel, and a lot of need for affordable housing, especially with people with disabilities. We also talked about river areas that, cute little towns that could have housing in their downtown, and a need to be smart about sustainability and incorporating climate-friendly policies into our building. I'm going to call on Katrina next, and then Eric for their reports out.
Thanks, Bradley. Yeah, we had a really great group, super respectful, great input. So thank you all so much, first of all, for the wonderful conversation. Building off what Bradley said, we, definitely had some conversations about, the sustainability of housing and how that integrates with climate change and public safety as well. There was concern about evacuation routes and how we need to incorporate that into our housing planning, and to also locate housing in areas that are less prone to disasters. So, focus more on city limits where infrastructure already is. So where public sewer and water is already provided, instead of, building outward where there might be more ecological impacts, creating more stormwater runoff. We heard a lot about vacation rentals and how they impact the housing stock. We also talked about the wage to rent, differences and how wages haven't kept up with rent increases, and how that's a huge challenge. It's a challenge that we didn't identify any great solutions to, but definitely something notable to mention. And then I think we also talked about transportation and how we need to, reduce commutes, and have transportation planning be a huge part of where we think housing should be.
Do we want?
Go ahead, Eric. Yeah. No, Eric can jump in. Thanks.
So we're going to do Eric, and then next we're going to do Brian.
Thanks, Bradley. In our group, we talked a lot about amenities and accessibility, transportation connections, and proximity to grocery stores and things like that. These sort of essential services that everybody needs, and a desire to be close to them. We talked at length about the process for building housing, and the complex and ever-changing regulatory landscape, and how we might remove some of that uncertainty and simplify that process, expediting development, permitting for development such as workforce housing, senior supportive housing, other types of very beneficial and necessary housing. We also talked a lot about infrastructure, and how there was a strong favor for high density residential, but unfortunately in the limited places where infrastructure currently exists, like water, wastewater, those sort of critical transportation, those critical services that are necessary to support them. Thanks.
So we've got Brian, and then we're going to do Tyler next.
All right. Well, so a lot of discussion, a lot of similar discussion that we just heard in the share outs. I would say additional discussion around what the role of government is in helping provide a safe, affordable, and different mix of housing types. So I think there was a good discussion, robust discussion on the merits of local government and their role. And then I would say one other piece is, in addition to the multimodal that we've heard, so walkability, bikeability, access to our core services, there was good discussion just around having gathering spaces, especially during the pandemic. I think has sort of amplified the need for us to, in addition to meeting in Zoom, to also be able to have that personal physical interaction. So looking for those opportunities in our neighborhoods or places for people to gather in different places was a big priority for Group 5.
Awesome. I think we've got Tyler and then Fernando next.
All right, yeah, we had a lot of those same sorts of issues come up on existing infrastructure, expansion of infrastructure. A lot of things we wanted to see in these neighborhoods popping up would be the idea of the schools for kids that could, support the families moving in, playgrounds, and the considerations for drought tolerant landscaping on that, adequate healthcare facilities in the area, electric car infrastructure, the idea of what exactly low income housing is and the ability maybe to increase the cap of those numbers for low income, being as Sonoma County is definitely it's higher cost of living than other places. Sewage disposal and the appropriate infrastructure on that one was a big one. The idea of sewer facilities and threats to our watershed. Definitely we focused around waste disposal, the increased need for the idea of programs that could deal with acceptable recycling, electronic and hazardous waste drop-off points. The next need for PG&E to have underground wires in this future construction. Considerations for wildlife corridors and the concepts of light pollution in new building construction. And the benefits and dangers of increased housing density types of units built for fire safety ended up coming up. And increased sidewalks as well. Speed humps too end up decreasing traffic hazards were another consideration.
Awesome. So Fernando, I believe is the last group that hasn't had a report out. So Fernando, take it away.
Okay, yeah, we mainly talk about the septic system, but the challenges and for multifamily units is a lot of stuff. We talk about the zoning because there's a lot of restriction in zoning, so it has to be changed, and the density and all these for every lot is very restricted. So and why we talk about the septic was that it also the system they are approved is that we need to have a different alternatives because it's very challenging with the geologic or the geology of the area, and so because of these restrictions, it's going to be difficult to develop new systems. And we talk about also, let me see, yeah, challenging the traffic, and then what they want to see in the area is also a healthcare, access to healthcare and reachable that is very close. So, and then the other things that we talk about was in a lot of areas, they have elderly care, and if we develop some areas, they don't have access to public health, and they're far away. Let me see, public access, and also most of the areas right here, they are used for tourism, and so they need to be aware that whatever is developed, they are going to not affecting the tourism because the county generate a lot of income from tourism, so it cannot be affected. And
Thank you so much, everybody, for sharing with us. We, obviously great report out, and it sounds like robust discussions with everybody in the groups. So I'm just going to share with you the next steps for the housing element. So the tentative timeline for the housing element kind of follows, which is that we're doing stakeholder outreach through March, through the end of March, and we're going to be working on, making sure that we're hearing from people on a wide variety of issues. We had our first survey that almost 2,000 people took that had gone out, and it is closed now. But we're going to have additional surveys, and so we will please make sure that you go to the housing element page of Sonoma County and sign up for updates about different opportunities to contribute. And so then between March and May, we're going to be working on actually, writing the text, taking all the great ideas that we heard from members of the public and putting that down in text. So one of the great things about this is that there's a legal requirement for us to respond to all the outreach that we got. So everything that you told us today, we have to consider and include in our housing element. There's a whole section about all of the things that that the members of the public told us. So it's really great level of accountability for making sure that we're listening to members of the public. So then between June and December, there's going to be publication, review, and revision. So we're going to put out a draft. We're going to ask for folks like you to review the draft, give us feedback, additional comments. We'll address those comments, and then it'll go to the Planning Commission and then eventually the Board of Supervisors, hopefully for final adoption in January 2023. That sounds like it's a long time away, but that's a lot of work between now and then. And your guys' fine comments today and your ideas are so important to that work. So thank you so much for joining us. We have one more meeting that is the same content as this on Tuesday. So if you've got a friend or family member, colleague, somebody that you know, neighbor, somebody that you know that has good ideas, please tell them to join us on Tuesday from 6 to 7:30. If you'd like to join us, you can. It's going to be the exact same content, but if you want to hear it twice, or if you come up with new ideas, you can join us. You can also reach Eric or myself at my email is Bradley, BRADLEY.Dunn, DUNN at sonoma-county.org. And Eric Gage, the project manager for this, is at eric.gage at sonoma-county.org with ideas. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you enjoy this beautiful, beautiful rest of your Saturday.